Welcome to Kaleidoscope S4IG Lets Talk. We at Kaleidoscope are all for religious coexistence and we embrace the practices and histories of religions around the world. Today, as we celebrate Holy Week, we focus on the origins of the cross. The cross gained some fame due to it being central to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ in 33 AD. But how much do we know about the cross, which forms the axis to an event that shaped world history? On S4IG Let's Talk today, we have the National Director of World Vision Lanka, Dr Dhanan Senathirajah, who is also a bit of a history buff, to take us through some of that history. Dhanan, welcome to the show. There's so much spoken about the cross, but always in the context of Jesus' crucifixion. What are the origins of the cross?
I believe that it was the Babylonians who started it off, and then the Romans perfected the art. But in between, the Assyrians and the Carthaginians, then the Greeks, they mastered the art as well in between. And from about 6th century BC up to the 4th century AD, crucifixion was quite common until Constantine, the first Christian emperor, did away with it. But there have been instances of crucifixion throughout history, even up to the 20th century.
Were there any distinctions of how people were crucified? Race, caste, creed, that kind of thing?
Generally, most of them crucified those who were rebellious, those who rose up against governmental authorities, and highwaymen, murderers. Those were the kind of people who were crucified. But at the same time, they generally didn't crucify their own people. For example, if you were a Roman citizen, the Romans would not have crucified you.
So, was Golgotha, the place of the skull as it was called, a common ground for executions like these, or were there others as well?
It seems so, because that was perhaps the place that was reserved by the Romans to execute and to crucify people during their period in Jerusalem.
So, Via Dolorosa is a buzzing hub of humanity. It's where daily life occurs as a matter of course. Now, Jesus walked this route to Golgotha. Was this the common route taken by people who were deemed to be crucified, or do prisoners just have their own journey mapped out separately?
It's likely that there would have been very few instances of the prisoner carrying his cross and walking through what we call as Via Dolorosa today. The primary reason is because the Roman governor who gave the order to execute Jesus, Pontius Pilate, did not live in Jerusalem. He was only visiting Jerusalem at that time in order to oversee arrangements or security arrangements for the Passover. So most likely, most of the orders for execution would have been passed in Caesarea Maritima. That's where the Roman governor had his office and his palace. So the Via Dolorosa might have been an exception where the Lord was asked to carry his cross, or perhaps the crossbeam, and then walk through the streets of Jerusalem as a punishment.
Were there different types of crosses, or was it just the standard cross that we know?
The one that is most popular is the one that we see in Christianity, but there were others in the form of a capital T, then X, or sometimes simply an upright pole, a vertical pole.
And I know you sort of touched on it earlier, but do we have crucifixions in today's context as well, and does it kind of continue? Does Golgotha also still exist?
Yeah, Golgotha is now a place of worship, and that's where I believe the Church of the Holy Sepulchre exists today. So it's a place of veneration today. But there have been instances even in the 20th and the 21st centuries. In certain Middle Eastern countries, certain groups have crucified people, but that's after beheading them, they nail the body to the cross. But there have been instances as late as the middle of the 20th century where in Japan there were some crucifixions. There were 26 Christians who were crucified in the 1920s in Japan.
And what can we learn from the origins of the cross?
A cross or crucifixion, from that you get the English word excruciating as well, unbearable pain, is perhaps the most painful and humiliating death. Romans crucified their victims stark naked. The men were crucified facing outward, women were crucified facing the cross.
There were women as well.
Women also were crucified, sometimes children as well. Even during the religious upheavals in Europe in the 15th century, a 13-year-old girl was crucified in Spain. and she was beaten up, and then finally she was crucified and she was beheaded. So it's a very cruel form of killing someone, extreme pain, and every bit of dignity that you have is taken away.
Thank you so much. It's a lot to ponder on, especially during Holy Week. To our wonderful partners, Skills for Inclusive Growth in Australian Aid, Srilanka Life, CDB, the Daily Morning Newspaper, and Made by Her, thank you very much. And if you'd like to follow us, please subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn.